just about what is going on with bullying. Is bullying more frequent or severe now than it used to be? It's certainly in the news more. Does that just mean that we're talking about it more? Or is it a growing problem? Is it a decreasing problem? Do you have a feeling or statistics about this?
Do you want to go first or last?
Sure, I'll go first.
I feel like I've been going first.
You started off first and like set the ball. I believe bullying, because it has been in recorded human history from the beginning in all cultures, and it's a fact of life that we've all struggled with. I'm not saying we accept it. I do believe that it's predominantly the same as it's always have been, other than who gets bullied in a given environment depends on how the environment is controlled by the adults and the people in charge. Those who are in charge will unintentionally or unconsciously create for the students what is acceptable and unacceptable behavior. And I know from interviewing many students that in a given school, one type of bullying may be more upfront or in your face, whereas in another school, because of the environment, the exact same type of bullying will still be being occurred, but it will be more under the radar and more in code and around the corner and hidden more. And that's simply because of the way things are being handled from the administration. Again, all bullying is wrong, and I believe all bullying needs to be addressed. It needs to be customized and it's being addressed. Every school district in the state needs to have an anti-bullying policy, and they need to enforce it vigorously to protect all students.
So I think that bullying, just like everything else in the world, is changing constantly. I believe that things change, and so it's not necessarily the same. We have been seeing a lot of it in the news, and I think there's some real reasons for that. But one of the major changes that I just wanted to point out to you tonight is the existence of the internet, and that this has been really interesting because 25 years ago, students didn't find ways to connect to other students that might be like them. So I personally know that I feel like part of the reason why I was able to understand my sexual orientation at the age of 16, and even just like sort of like think about that is because of the internet. Because I was able to Google, or I think at that time it was Internet Explorer that I used as a search engine. But the whole point is that is making that information and technology that makes information accessible to younger people, gives them a different understanding of the world. It's bigger and broader for a 13-year-old now than it was 50 years ago. So the bullying still happens, and it did back then, and I agree with that, back whenever, even when cavemen were around. But the whole idea of the internet drastically changes it, because it brings a lot of identity and sort of like self-awareness that we didn't necessarily have years back. So I think the reason why it's actually gotten a lot of media attention is because people are starting to pay attention to that. And then you get a lot of money, funders and groups that start up and cause attention to happen because of all this. Maybe because they were bullied as a kid. I know this seems like really sort of aloof and big and whatever, but there are people and there are organizations and foundations even that fund groups like the Safe Schools Coalition. And how do they even have money to put into a group like mine? Somebody cares about it. So there's money attached to all this in the media, and there's groups like the Trevor Project, and there's groups that are all funded through either member donations or some other types of funding. And why is it getting spent on bullying now? I think it's because of the hyper awareness, because of the internet, and because of technology and information. Cavemen debated bullying with clubs, not microphones. So I just think it's real interesting because we are, even though you know, every generation has had to deal with new issues. I don't remember ever being in a classroom without a computer. I'm 27 years old, and my first grade classroom had a computer, and I know, and that's different from the experiences of somebody that is older than me. And now the fact that people carry it around in their back pocket, and they carry it to school with them, and you have one right there. And so I just think it's real interesting when we talk about bullying and how it's changed and why it's been in our minds. It's because it has sort of evolved. Everything evolves and changes. So I think that that's really interesting, and I think it's really important to note that, like, I think this bill that he's talking about and that we've sort of proposed and is in law now has went through many changes, and we're still trying to figure out what the best thing is to do. And I think that the real interesting thing about law, which I love and I'm obsessed about, is the changes in law and the way that it tries to get to the heart of an issue as much as it can. It really tries. The legislators, I believe, most legislators, at least most, are out there trying to do the best thing. Whether they're Democrat or Republican, I don't really care. And I think that that's something that most of the people in the country are sort of like fed up with. So I think that it's real interesting that even though it's seen many different stages, this law, we can weave back and forth and figure out what's the right fit to make the best policy to change the most lives. So I just think that everything evolves. I think I went really long on that answer. So
I just want to thank again our participants.